All right. So welcome everyone. We are going to be talking today about what retailers should be doing now and in the first half of Q4 to set yourself up for a great holiday. So as people start coming in, I'll kind of set the stage for this conversation and introduce our panelists today. With everything that's happened so far this year, add on to it that it's a presidential election year. The shipping and logistics networks are kind of being stretched to the absolute limit, maybe even beyond the limit of what they can handle in the country. And that we might even have an Amazon Prime Day in Q4. It's going to be a wild fourth quarter for everybody. So today we're talking with a couple of marketers from really great high growth retail brands who are going to be discussing what they do at the beginning of Q4 to set themselves up for really good holidays. So here's how today's session is going to work. So we're going to be talking to our panel for about a half an hour and just learning from what their backgrounds are and what they do in this period of time. I'm going to be asking questions open format to that group. And for my panelists, if you have something to add, feel free to jump in. But then we're going to handle some Q&A from the audience. So for all of our attendees joining, you've got the little Q&A widget down at the bottom of your Zoom window. So just hit that and put your questions in there. And then at about the half-hour mark, we're going to switch over to audience Q&A. So the plan is to go about, an hour. If it's lighter, then we'll end a little bit early and everyone will get a little bit of their hour back. And at the close, we'll just leave you with a few kind of closing thoughts and things you can take away. But with that, I'm going to head into intros of our panelists. So I'd like to introduce everyone on the webinar to Katie Bullman of Masonette. Katie has over 10 years of digital marketing and e-commerce experience. She's worked for brands like Levi Strauss and Perricone MD, with additional stops in the agency world on top of the in-house work that she's done. But she's now the Director of Growth and Marketing at Masonette. Masonette is a curated online marketplace for children's products. So welcome, Katie. Thanks for joining. And we also have Corey Bruce of Wild One. Corey has spent almost a decade in full funnel marketing at high growth direct consumer brands that he spent at leading customer acquisition and retention primarily. So his last 4 years have been spent in the pet products world, formerly with a company you may have heard of called BarkBox. I know that my wife and I subscribed for a while. And he's now the Director of Digital Marketing at Wild One, which is making thoughtfully designed products for dogs. Welcome, Corey. Awesome. And just to introduce myself, so I'm Josh McClouse. I'm from Metric Theory. Metric Theory is a performance digital marketing agency that works with growing brands like Masonette and Wild One to help them find new customers. But I'll just be asking the questions today. So maybe we can lead off and just show the audience a little bit more about your backgrounds and how you got to where you are now. Why don't we start with Katie?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. So, like Josh said, I started my career agency side. So I got some hands-on learning experiences in search, social, programmatic, really when these platforms were nascent about a decade ago. And after 5 years of working agency side and, having that wonderful work hard, play hard kind of experience, I decided to go back to grad school. And after grad school, I decided I wanted to, pursue a passion in consumer marketing. And, really the kind of the focus area that I wanted to go into is e-commerce. With the idea being that e-commerce is where a lot of innovation is happening within the marketing landscape today. So since then, I have worked, brand side. I've worked at a beauty company that was owned by a private equity group. I've worked at a large private apparel brand that went public while I was there, which was an interesting transition. And now I'm at a startup that's a marketplace. So a nice kind of diverse set of different different brands within the e-com world.
Corey?
Yeah, thanks. So I've been in kind of this digital marketing role for 9 years. I got my start at a smaller omni-channel company specializing in kids and baby products. And at that time, again, 8-9 years ago, it was digital marketing was in a very different place. This concept of paid social advertising was new, and a small piece of what a lot of marketing departments were focusing on at the time. And I was kind of getting to experience the growth of that in real time. And in my role, I was sort of a jack of all trades, working across a lot of different channels, and that includes even sort of experiential and in-store as well. But that really just kind of drove my passion to focus more in the digital space, and really lean into some more innovative tactics. And I was there for quite a while, spearheading their kind of digital e-commerce business, and then moved over to Bark, and that's where I got just a ton of experience, just in a very high growth environment, where all of a sudden our budgets were almost entirely spent in paid social advertising, and we were experimenting with things like TV and broadcast, and everything was on a different kind of scale. There too, I focused on e-commerce. They had an e-commerce store, which was my focus, and so have always been focused on e-commerce and just direct to consumer. And then after a couple of years there, I went over to Wild One. Wild One was months old at that point. I joined last January. And really got to experience for the first time building something from sort of the ground up, and kicking off a lot of channel expansion instead of kind of taking it on at an already kind of matured state. So just love being a part of that and working on a small, innovative, kind of gritty, high growth team.
Awesome. Thank you both for those responses. So yeah, I mean, in terms of what we heard from both of you is the kind of wearing a lot of different hats. I think for most of our audience is probably going to resonate with them, and certainly the topics that we're going to be covering today in terms of how to approach holiday, and especially how to have like a smashing holiday, require a lot of different approaches. So so with that, I think to kind of set the tone for the folks who are joining. What does holiday prep typically look like for you? Kind of, a brief, when does it start? What does the kind of approach look like? And where are you at right now? Why don't we start with Corey?
Yes. So our holiday prep really starts with product development, and that starts, at least a year out. So, we're coming out of holiday of last year, planning for, what our product assortment and what our marketing strategy is for this year, which is kind of lucky for me that I kind of have this like roadmap already built, and now I have to kind of build around that. But our holiday communications, our marketing strategy, it's heavily influenced by product development, by new products that we're launching at the time, by products we think are going to be the anchor products for the season. So it's a lot of that for, you know, the first 6 months of the year, just making sure that, you know, everything's launching on time and that we have all of these strategies built out around each one of those launches and how they play into the bigger, you know, the bigger conversation happening around holiday and gifting. And then June hits. I would say late May, June hits, and all of a sudden it's real detailed planning. We're talking budgets, goal setting, reforecasting is a huge part of that. Working very closely with our internal teams and our finance teams, but also our metric theory account team, to basically say, okay, here's where we are year to date, and here's what we should expect for the rest of the year. Obviously, this year was extremely different, so that reforecasting piece was, you know, a big one and a challenging one. We still don't really know what to expect. But we go in saying, okay, you know, here's what we should be doing for the next few months ahead of this period, and then once that happens, you know, it's everything from again, aligning on those product launches, making sure our website is in a good place, building out any experiences we want to add in before holiday, any gifting specific experiences, anything that's going to optimize the conversion funnel. That's what happens, and we're kind of at the back end of that now, almost, you know, ready to launch, ready to roll for holiday.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess, you know, just to echo on that, you know, for me, holiday planning pretty much starts immediately after the preceding holiday ends. And really what I mean by that is, you know, doing a retrospective as quickly as possible, as quickly as your team is able to rally, and figuring out what worked during that holiday, what didn't work, you know, doing an analysis of what your competitors did. And that really does help inform if there's going to be any type of product development that needs to happen. And, you know, from my experience, it's more teeing up an engineering roadmap. So if you wanted to create something that was more robust on your website for future forward holiday, getting kind of that engineering roadmap solidified as quickly as possible is key. And, you know, in terms of what we're doing right now, I mean, we've already kind of gone through the planning stages for holiday, the brainstorming stage where, you know, everyone has a million and one ideas, and we've stripped down and prioritized, okay, here are the, you know, the 4 or 5 things that we're going to go after. So at this point, our teams are meeting weekly. It's a cross-functional team, and we are, you know, presenting out more kind of the final elements of our plan. And, you know, within the next couple of weeks, we're going to be moving into our execution stage. So, you know, right now on the cusp of moving towards actually launching some of our holiday initiatives.
I think Josh is.
Oh, I wondered. I thought that was me. So, you know, I guess I'll kind of keep elaborating on that note. So, you know, at this time, we're finalizing things like assortment, our creative assets, you know, our promotional calendar, our site experience. With our metric theory agency team, you know, we're wrapping up what our testing calendar is going to be. You know, for the most part, I think we're, you know, aligned that launching tests during holiday is not necessarily best practice. So, you know, we're trying to, you know, wrap up testing so that, you know, when we do launch in the next couple of weeks, we are hitting the ground running with our best foot forward.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks. So when you talk about the kind of pre-holiday period, so a lot of that planning is kind of usually, I mean, this year might be a little bit different. We can talk about that, but usually geared toward Black Friday, Cyber Monday, the peak holiday shopping season, but you have all this other holiday shopping season that happens right on the front end. So that's what we want to kind of focus on today. So let's talk about, how that looks, especially in a year like 2020 for retailers. What makes, September right now, and then the beginning even of October and in Q4, what makes that different this year to both you and the brands you're working with now? Katie, why don't you start?
Sure. I mean, I think that we're anticipating that holiday is going to start very, very early this year. There's a lot of signs pointing towards that. If you look at Sephora's website today, they have already launched their holiday kits. Obviously Amazon is announcing their Prime Day in October. Walmart is going to be doing a full month worth of Black Friday. I mean, it's going to be happening very soon. And so I think in terms of pre-holiday success, really what we're trying to do to ensure that we have a successful holiday is making sure that we're building consideration during, the September, October timeframe. And so, tactically that could mean, launching some of our media campaigns to get traffic to sites, that we're building our cookie pools, we're driving as many new email addresses as possible, so that, even if there aren't sales coming from all of this particular traffic, that when we do start, messaging holiday in a more aggressive way, that we have a very large addressable audience to speak to. So really that's kind of the tactical way that we're maneuvering around it. There's a lot going on right now, and we don't have a crystal ball necessarily in terms of what is going to be happening. So it's very much at this point trying to be considerate of how early things are going to be launching.
Totally. Yeah. Corey, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, this year specifically at this time, I think we're trying to get a better understanding of like what costs are looking like, and how competitive advertising will be. It's kind of hitting twofold this year. One, the effects of the pandemic and having a lot more competition in the digital space, a lot of those retailers moving online and investing there. And then additionally, there's the elections, which are impacting, advertising costs as well. So for us, it's trying to get a better understanding of that, and obviously adjusting our goals and our expectations and our strategy to accommodate for that. Like Katie said, holiday shopping in general seems to be starting earlier this year. A lot of that could be just, as a result of the pandemic. And again, a lot of retailers trying to kind of make up some ground this year. So they're getting ahead of that. And, also I think it's a slightly shorter shopping year anyway, with the way that Black Friday and then Christmas falls this year. I think people are very kind of hyper aware of a lot of potential shipping and delivery issues with carriers, with fulfillment centers. So everything is starting earlier. We personally are prioritizing customer service resources. We want to make sure that we're ahead of any of those issues that we have. We're communicating with our customers when those issues arise, that we're making sure their expectations are in the right place. And then for us specifically for the pet space and for, I could assume, many other categories, we're going in already with this heightened demand for our product and the products that live within this category. The pandemic has resulted in a lot of increased adoptions and fostering and spending time at home with your pets. And so we are essentially, wanting to make sure that we're really driving up that pre-holiday demand. We might not be seeing that conversion happening right now, but we really want to make sure that, when the time comes, we're top of mind for those consumers, because it's a exponentially larger market this year than it has been in the past.
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to, both of you talked about the holiday shopping season starting early. Give me a perspective. Do you think it's like happening right now? Is it about to happen? Is it kind of different depending on the market, or how do you see things like this year compared to previous years?
I think the research is happening now. I'm not sure that actual shopping is happening. I know that search volume is starting to go up around gifts by a good amount. But I think in terms of conversion, we'll probably see that start in October. That's kind of my perspective.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I feel like with anything this year, there's one end of the pendulum is saying that, like, yes, holiday shopping is going to start early, but then the other end of the pendulum is saying, like, well, it might happen, during anticipated times. And what I mean by that is, obviously, people are starting to search right now for holiday shopping. Pinterest had a webinar a few weeks ago, and they're talking about how holiday searches are up in April and May, double-fold from the previous year, which is indicating signs that people are already starting to do research. And we talked a little bit about how consumers are also starting to do research earlier because of challenges with the shipping network and making sure that gifts are getting to homes at the right time. But on the other side of the pendulum too, I mean, I do think that we can't discount that consumers are sometimes are in a tough place given the economy, and who knows exactly kind of what the consumer trends and habits are going to be for this particular year. I think Corey and I are in a special space where our particular industries are actually, or our particular kind of niches are doing really well. But when we think about, kind of the rest of the economy and the rest of the retail landscape, I sometimes have questions of if this is going to be a bigger Black Friday in total, versus previous years, given the job insecurity in the country right now.
So really preparing for that wider range of potential outcomes, right?
I think so.
I can't believe there are people looking at holiday stuff in April. I'd like to meet those people and try to get into whatever line of work that they're in so that I can just relax and start thinking about the holidays in April. I'm usually thinking about what patio I need to go sit on. But that's just me. So let's talk more about the specific types of tactics that you employ. So we're talking about trying to build the funnel. We're trying to close as much of that as we can at the end of the holiday period. Both of you have run TV in the past, right? How is that part of your strategy this year? How is it? And is there anything that you'd be doing differently with it in 2020? Katie?
Sure. So, I mean, this is my first holiday with Maisonette, but we did run TV last year, and we're going to continue to run that tactic this year, this particular channel, and CTV this year. And, I will say that, the biggest difference in how we're approaching it this year versus last year is that we are starting, frankly, a lot earlier, about 4 weeks earlier. So, really what we're trying to do is build consideration using more of this, what we can call upper funnel, type of channel, so that when the holiday timeframe does come, we are building that consideration and that pipeline so that when when sales hit, when our robust and aggressive marketing hits, we can, convert a larger addressable audience. So I would say that's the biggest component of how we're managing TV.
Okay.
Yeah, we tested TV out for Wild One earlier this year in June, and we are planning to go back to it for the holidays. We got a lot of awesome learnings, and in general, I think that, that was a holiday tactic in and of itself, is getting ahead of that and learning those new channels and knowing what they do for you and what the impact is. And so we can take that and apply it during our, highest volume, highest converting, season. And we're going to run it a little bit more lean this time around. We're really leaning into those handful of networks that worked for us during the pilot. We're not going to blow out our budgets with it, but we're going to use it as sort of an additive type of channel to our mix. Very specifically focusing on top of the funnel. We know what our conversion rates look like during the holidays, and we know that our qualified audience becomes exponentially larger, just given that more people are buying for people with dogs, so we don't necessarily have to get in front of somebody that has a dog and has a need for our products. So we're leaning more into the high volume, low cost networks and programs. What we saw a lot of response from in terms of traffic, but not necessarily conversion back in June. And we're also going to cut out a lot of different creative elements that we tested, like the longer format, 30-second formats, sticking to 15, so we can just get a lot of touch points, a lot of impressions, and a lot of traffic. And what we've been doing over the last few months and just supercharging our website and our product offering to help conversion is what we're banking on will close that loop.
Nice. And what about video advertising, beyond TV? So, how important is that, especially when it comes to Q4 for the brands that you work for now? And how are you looking for it? Is it a performance contributor? Is it filling the same kind of role as TV? Corey, what do you think?
Yeah, it's not filling the same role as TV. Like I said, we're running 15-second, brand awareness ads on TV. You're not going to get a lot of detail from that. Video is huge for us. It's consistently our number one kind of format of advertising, especially for our products. It's obviously no secret that Wildland products are more on the premium end of the price range in the market. We factor a lot of things into our product development, functionality and materials and so on. And so we need to kind of get that across to a consumer as they're seeing those ads, so that there's no sticker shock when they get to the site. And so it's super important that we're getting that explainer type content out there, and videos the way to do it. So it's a huge part of our strategy this year is focusing on video.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo on that, I mean, it's obvious that the way that people are consuming content these days is video. And so video is a very integral part of our entire, full funnel marketing strategy. But, not all video is created equal within an individual platform. And so, there really has to be a lot of consideration for how you tailor your video content to fit what platform it's sitting in, or what channel it's sitting in, and also what audience you're showing it to. So, within TV, you're telling a narrative. You have a longer format. It's more about brand aesthetic and making a lasting impression in terms of brand awareness and brand consideration. When we're talking about using video to remarket to our active email subscriber base, or featuring a particular product for remarketing, it's a very different video. Within social, it's short, it's fast cuts, it's heavily featuring the product versus a model. So video is super important, but it's going to look wildly different, pending the channel, as well as the audience that we're targeting to, and how well that audience knows our particular brand.
Got it. For the kind of like setup part of the strategy. You both talked about especially using video to introduce the brand to people who might be shopping, to, you know, show them, you know, what separates you in a specific market. But what about promotional pricing for the holidays? Do both of your brands participate in promotional pricing? How do you go about determining how to do that? And are you doing anything with your marketing in the beginning of Q4 to kind of set up those promotions, or do you really just focus on awareness? Katie?
Sure. This is where that holiday retrospective really comes into play from the previous year, and understanding what worked from, you know, what worked and what didn't work. So yes, you know, we do feature promotions on the site, and you know, a lot of the learnings that we were able to kind of deduce from 2019 rolled into our promotional strategy for 2020. And you know, I think that the biggest consideration in helping us craft what we're doing for 2020 is it's fairly complex in that, you know, obviously we're a marketplace and we feature a lot of different brands that had, you know, stock shortages because of the pandemic, and said, you know, we are trying to take as much input from what we know about this particular year and what's worked for this particular year in terms of product assortment, what worked last year, and then also thinking about, you know, how is the holiday season going to be shaped up a little bit different. So I think these are kind of the three main buckets that helped influence our promotional calendar. But that being said, I think the biggest learnings were, you know, last year our promo calendar was a little too complex. So we streamlined everything to make it as easy on the consumer as possible. And that we're also probably going to be stretching out some of our promotions to be a little bit longer, to try to capture all of that, you know, kind of extra extra demand that we've had this year.
Yeah, for us, you know, you guys used last year. You went through a retrospective. For us, I think the big learning period was this year. We had to get extremely creative earlier this year, just how, you know, things were shaken up by the pandemic, and so we did test a lot of different, you know, promotional incentives and formats and types and ranges. And we have a pretty good understanding of what our audience responds to. So, you know, we're going into the holiday season planning with that in mind. And, you know, I think interestingly, there's always this kind of like feeling of like, okay, those types of efforts are last resort and that they're not the most economical. We've done a lot more, you know, analysis around these promotions this year than we've done in the past, to try to make sure that, you know, they are in fact economical and they are impactful to acquisition and growth and retention. We've done a lot of the math to see which types of promotions got the best response and were the most, you know, economical, and we're factoring that into how we plan our promotions for the holiday period as well. But I think the biggest learning from this year that we're, you know, going to continue to use is this concept of positioning. I think it's super important, you know, this year to acknowledge the fact that like the economy is different, and that, you know, using promotions to make your products more accessible is definitely the way that you want to position things, and not necessarily doing it, you know, purely to boost business or to at least appear from a consumer standpoint that you're doing it to boost business. And so there's a lot of different tactics and a lot of ways you can kind of like position and message promotions to really, you know, speak to somebody who's in that position or who is shopping with that in mind.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's such a great way to put it and to look at it this year, especially as you know, Katie pointed out, you might have to expand those promotional timeframes a lot longer this year because people are going to be shopping longer. You're competing with all these other retailers that are throwing out their promotions much earlier. Huge retailers are going to drive demand all on their own. But bring it to your customer from the point of view of knowing that, you know, we're making the product more accessible to you in this time. I think that, you know, that could go a long way. So kind of small tweaks in messaging like that will probably be, you know, a big factor this year. Yeah. Awesome. So, you know, we've talked a lot about kind of overarching strategies. And one of the things that I think, you know, people always like to hear about are kind of success stories from the past. So is there a campaign or an initiative in the early part of Q4 from, you know, it can be from a previous stop or from the brands that you're currently with, that you've been a part of that stands out to you as having been particularly effective? Corey, why don't you start?
Yeah, I mean, to keep it relevant, and I've only been at Wild One for one holiday season. You know, launching products, and especially seasonal products, and launching products that we've, you know, heard from our customers that there's already a demand for, doing that right ahead of holiday is massively impactful. We you know, we launched our travel carrier last November, and it immediately became, you know, our bestseller. Sold it out very, very quickly. And, you know, it's been a challenge to even keep that in stock, even through the pandemic, where, you know, travel is not happening. So, you know, we're going into this year with the same mentality of, like, you know, we've been hearing from our customers for now 2 years. We know what they want. We know what they respond to. We're going to drop those things at the right time. Basically, what we've learned is going into holiday with a larger catalog is, you know, yields incremental revenue. And so that's our biggest, you know, success story for sure. The other one I just wanted to mention, we don't know how successful this will be, but this year I think, you know, a lot of holiday spending will be driven by this concept of, like, cause-driven consumerism. I think a lot of people want to support small businesses, support businesses that you know, just based on social factors that are currently, you know, hot topic. And so we want to be part of that conversation, and we want to be very transparent and partake. And so we're doing a lot of that now, and we plan on launching some campaigns in the next few weeks that really play into that. So we're positioned, you know, well for holiday, and we're actually part of that conversation. So I think that's important to do, you know, every single year, is to kind of analyze what's really, and, you know, environmentally and socially important to consumers during that time.
Yeah, no, that's a great call. And I think, you know, right now people are definitely probably feeling like they wish that they could do more, you know, especially with, as you pointed out, like local businesses. You know, I saw something earlier today, even it was in the New York Times, about, you know, how many restaurants are still really struggling in the city right now. And, you know, we've been trying to support as many as we can, but there's no making up with takeout or, you know, to-goes, the business that they had before this. So yeah, that could be a really powerful topic, definitely. What about you, Katie?
Sure. Yeah. So, you know, this is my first holiday at Maisonette, so I don't have experience for this particular company. But
Doris?
I think kind of an interesting insight and learning while I was at Levi's. So I managed our performance marketing across our entire digital kind of marketplace. So that included our owned and operated websites, Levi's.com, our Amazon business, and then also businesses on Macy's.com and Kohl's.com, et cetera, et cetera. And so, as you can imagine, the promotional calendar for that entire kind of web of digital marketplaces is very complex. And I think there was always kind of this notion that there would be cannibalization between these different marketplaces. When Amazon Prime, for example, had its promotion, it was assumed that it would be a horrible day on Levi's.com. But I think, you know, really if you're a marketer and you have product that's across a variety of different marketplaces, I think what's important to consider is having promotions that are crafted for that particular channel. So what might work on Kohl's will not necessarily work on Levi's, and making sure that so that your promotions are curated, and that also that they are staggered, and that it doesn't necessarily mean that one is going to be cannibalizing over the other, but rather that holistically everything is going to lift each other up. So, I guess like one of the better initiatives that I did was managing our Prime Day promo. And it didn't necessarily cannibalize what we did on other websites, because we crafted it in such a way where we, addressed that particular audience, specifically had a promotion specific for the Amazon audience. And in the end, it worked out really well. So.
Nice. Awesome. All right, let's check in and see what our audience questions are. Okay, here's one. What is one, oh, this is good. What is one big thing you learned over the course of your career about the holidays? It's almost kind of like a parting thought. Corey?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I've experienced a lot of holidays, and it's been a huge, everywhere I've been, it's been 25 to 30% of our annual revenue just coming from that short period between November and Christmas. For me, it's to not overcomplicate things. I think a lot of marketers have this urge to really kind of create these complex campaigns and these promotions, and to layer in all of these kind of like seasonally relevant types of content, and build out all of these new features on your website, and do flash sales, and do a deal every single day of December, and just become really kind of commercialized. And I think that's a lot more effort than what it yields in kind of returns. I think it's super important to really identify what works and what doesn't, and identify a handful of products, or identify really what year after year your customers come to you for during the holidays, and just lean into it, and be very focused, and just make sure that your website is operating at its best capacity. Make sure your conversion funnel is super healthy, that product discoverability on your website is there, making sure that people can shop the way that they want to shop. A lot of people like to shop by price point, instead of thinking so creatively about how we can present gifts to a potential gift giver. Make sure you do that, but also that you're offering them the traditional ways of shopping during the holidays. So I think it's just super important to be extremely focused in your messaging, in your content, in your experience on site, and not overcomplicate it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think kind of another insight that I've learned in the course of my career is no matter the amount of planning that you put into it, there's no way to really understand how your holiday is going to shake out. You don't know what your competitors are going to do. You don't necessarily know exactly how consumer trends are going to move, right? And so I think for me, it's about making sure that you are enabling your teams and your particular company to react and be flexible during the holiday timeframe. So, this could be contingency planning for promotions, or contingency planning for campaigns. But I also think it's really important to have just a daily stand-up in some capacity that's, cross-functional, so that, daily trends can be identified, performance reports can be analyzed, and that teams are able to then react to what's happening. So if you're down one day, maybe there's some strings that you can pull really quickly to kind of lift up your particular performance. Or let's say there's a product that's out of stock. How do you then shift consumer perspective to then, focus on another product? So I think being flexible, being open-minded, being flexible, and then enabling kind of a structure internally within your organization and with your agency teams, that, so that you're meeting daily and you're able to react is pretty critical.
Yeah, no, I mean, especially this year, I feel like, it's probably always important, but geez, this year. Cool, so we have a couple more that have come in. So what one big thing or set of things are you planning to do differently to set yourself apart from the growing competition this year? So do you expect there to be like more brands and like more noise? And are you addressing that? Or how do you approach competition in a year where it's expected to increase for a lot of folks? Katie?
Yeah, I'll start with that. I think competition is going to be very stiff. Corey had talked about the election. Especially if you're advertising in a social space, the election is going to overlap with what you're doing. We've also talked about how a lot of retailers are moving towards a digital experience because, in store is closed or limited because of the pandemic. So yes, I think competition is going to be very fierce. I think a way to consider, managing that is making sure that you are trying to proactively pull together as many addressable audiences as possible. And what I mean by that is building your cookie pool, really leaning into your email list, uploading your email list into Google, uploading your email list into social, and making sure that you're using your addressable audiences as much as possible, rather than going out and trying to find, as many new prospecting audiences. This will ensure that you're really targeting and reaching the people that know about your brand and that have heard about your brand, at least from a performance standpoint. So I think that's one way of thinking about it.
Yeah, definitely. I know when we start working with clients for the first time, one of the big things that we see is often they don't even have their current customer base, separated out in audiences for things like socializer audiences are so important. But yeah, leaning into that group right now seems like the most, clear thing that you can do. They're captive. They're already fans, and getting as, in front of them as much as possible when it's going to be hard to do that in other ways.
Sure, exactly. Critical. And if you're more of a sophisticated retailer, doing segmentation of your audience and doing personalization too will help break through a lot of that clutter.
Yeah, and I think, two things that come to mind. One, kind of going off of what I said before, making sure that you're kind of leaning into the things that, this year matter most to the consumers. Not everybody will be doing that. And so, if you can participate there, then you're going to stand out. So there's a brand side of things to it. And then, the other thing is being willing to sort of wave the white flag and forfeit on a lot of things. When it comes to search, for instance, or, your shopping campaigns, or even certain products that, you're trying to market, trying to sell throughout the holidays, you might have a leg up in certain categories and it might be more competitive in others. And, maybe it's worth saying, maybe we're not going to, try to own, a share voice for a certain category this year and leave that to our competitors. We have more differentiators in this category. Let's lean in there. We hold a lot of different products out of our advertising because we know how competitive they are. We know what the market looks like. We know how we are positioned in the market, and we know what the purpose of those products are. Maybe they're not necessarily a good product for acquisition, but they're more of an upsell, or a retention product or a subscription product. So I think, identifying areas that you can kind of step away and let your competitors fight over, and then finding the things where you really have those differentiators, and maybe it's not as competitive, and just leaning in there.
Yeah, finding those pockets where you can compete, or if you're in a really broadly defined category, knowing what everyone has and the specific things that you can bring to the table. Definitely. Let's do one more audience question and we'll wrap up. So let's talk budgeting. This is a good one. How are you budgeting this year with the onset of COVID-19? E-commerce is obviously already up this year. You're both working for high growth brands even before that happened. Because it's so different this year, are you just kind of like being really open-ended with your budgets, or how have you gone through that process for the holiday period?
Yeah, I could start on that. We are budgeting with flexibility in mind, for sure. And given not everybody's in the position to do that, but we had the approach earlier this year when things got kind of shaken up, and it definitely worked to our advantage. But right now we are being aggressive for, I think, the performance that we're getting out of those dollars, and that's very specifically to kind of muscle through this high cost, lower converting period of time, and making sure that our funnels are filled, our retargeting pools are filled, we're collecting email addresses, and we are making sure that we're forecasting properly, that we're able to increase spend over the holidays and do that at a level of efficiency that counters sort of what we're doing right now, and levels everything out. And so, we're going to come out of this pre-holiday period knowing where we stand, currently in terms of a trend, and also on the year. And, we're going to stick to our budgets going to holiday, but I think how we progress through the season, as we see what's working and as we see performance come in, we're going to adjust, and that could be, adjust over to take advantage of the performance that we're seeing, and try to get, just further ahead on what our forecast is for the year. Or, we're going to play into efficiency and say we're going to hold budgets. And, it really depends on what our goal is for that end of year outlook. So whether you manage towards efficiency or revenue and try to level out efficiency, it's kind of by business, but we're being super flexible with it.
Yeah, I completely agree. We've obviously projected out what our budgets are going to be in Q4, and they've grown, fairly considerably from a year-on-year perspective. And so with that, we have thought about what is our channel diversification strategy, because our budgets have increased so much. We can't just fully lean into our existing channels right now. So I think that's one component of it. And that's where, CTV comes into play, and thinking more robustly about video, right? I think the second component of it too is, it really is going to ladder up to, ultimately what your, for us, like what our internal teams, what our finance team wants to focus on for end of year, right? And so I think that that's where the daily check-in really comes into play, because, some days, maybe in the end, we're going to say, we are going to sacrifice a little bit of efficiency to hit a particular target that we had in mind from a revenue standpoint. Or, it might be the reverse in that, we want to hit a certain number of new customers. And so we're being open-minded and being very flexible. I think, in addressing with our agency teams and, kind of with internal teams, we've put some kind of stakes in the grounds in terms of like, all right, when we're managing our day-to-day media budgets, we want our cost per customer acquisition not to raise it, above X, Y, and Z, or our, ROAS not to raise above X, Y, and Z. If we see a trend, in a negative direction, how do we course correct, or are there other considerations that we need to be thinking about? So I think, budgeting is very much a fluid and, dynamic conversation for this year. There's definitely been some planning that's been put into place, but because of so many unknowns of how this holiday is going to shake out, I really do think it's going to come down more to the, in the moment, when holiday is happening, and figuring out ultimately what is that, end of year goal going to be.
Yeah, I really like the idea of kind of opening up the daily stand-up with kind of considering that and working closely with finance on it. It's kind of like that old business adage of ask for money from finance on a Friday. Like keep checking in with them. Things might change, right? Like you never know exactly how things are going to go. So that's definitely good advice. Well, I think that's pretty much the time that we have. So I really just want to extend my thanks to both of our contributors, our panelists today, Corey and Katie. Thank you both. So for everyone who attended, we'll be following up with the recording. We really encourage you to share it with your teams if you feel like it's something that they'll get value out of. Anyone else that you have in your network who's also in retail. Also, we can announce today this is going to be the beginning of a series that we're going to do on e-commerce in the holidays and a number of different topics that we're exploring. So be on the lookout for an invitation to kind of further webinars in the series. And really quickly, we're also, I want to plug that we're also going to be following up with a new tool that we created that we hope is useful to everybody. It's a holiday marketing calendar. It's fully customizable to your brand. It's a new tool that we're releasing this year. And what we're going to do is as more news comes out on Prime Day and how Walmart responds to Prime Day and all of these other, big retailers adjusting their schedules, we're going to be updating that calendar live and sending out new versions so that you can adjust your schedule on the fly. So a really cool tool. So be on the lookout for that if you feel like it'll be useful. Thank you all for joining. Thanks again to our panelists. And we hope to see you in another live chat soon. Bye, everybody.